Left out of my parents' wedding. After 25 years together, lied about, and called entitled. I posted the truth online. 3 hours later, their guests knew. I recognize that this appears to be an unusual circumstance, but I'm so angry and depressed that I feel compelled to express myself, even if no one is listening. So I, a 17 female, was recently forgotten during my parents' wedding. My parents have been together for over 25 years, but they have never married. That's why when my father, 50 male, proposed to my mother, 49 female, on their anniversary, which they've always celebrated on the day my mother discovered she was pregnant with my eldest sister, even though they'd been together before. Everyone, including me, was overjoyed and celebrated the occasion enthusiastically. This occurred back in February. They promptly began wedding preparations, deciding early on to hold a modest affair in Hawaii, with only their closest family and friends for an intimate ceremony. Almost immediately, my mother asked my sister, 25 female, to be her maid of honor, and my father asked my brother, 22 male, to be his groomsman. I was not surprised nor offended by this. My sister had always been a mommy's girl, and they both enjoyed spending time together, shopping and socializing, so they had a very strong relationship. The same goes for my father and brother. They were often playing football together and working on autos. My father even coached my brother's team in middle school. That usually left me as the odd one out. I attempted to participate in my family's interests and groups that met in our home, but was consistently turned down. Maybe they sensed that my interest in their activities was not fully genuine, or perhaps they simply didn't care. Regardless, I was used to being the last and least important member of my family. Mom had a sister, and Dad had a brother. My parents had each other, and my two siblings were closer than they had ever been to me, leaving me feeling lonely and alienated in my own house. During the wedding preparations, it was suggested that I be the flower girl, but my sister felt the role would be more suited to her daughter, 3 female, so the proposal was soon abandoned. Later, my maternal grandmother offered that I read a poem or give a little speech during the ceremony, but both of my parents declined because they wanted the wedding to be low-key, and they didn't believe a cliched and sappy speech would match their vision. I was still good with it all, even though it hurt to know that I would be the only family member who would not be in the wedding party or play any role on the big day. As the wedding date approached, my parents and siblings were increasingly involved in the arrangements. I observed my mother didn't invite me to dress shopping, and whenever they talked about the venue or the event, I was left out. I decided to wait and see if they'd notice I wasn't involved at all, so I remained silent, waiting for them to ask me something, anything about the wedding. But that never occurred. The wedding was scheduled for 3 weeks ago, toward the end of August. My mother casually inquired if I had my luggage ready the day before our trip, because we couldn't be late for the airport. I honestly informed her that I had not prepared anything. She looked perplexed for a moment before snapping at me for being unprepared. I immediately asked her if I had a ticket, and her face turned pale. Yep. They hadn't even purchased my ticket, and I'm not sure if I had a room or other arrangements once there. Even though I was the only member in my family without a steady income, I work as a part-time babysitter. My parents had purchased first-class tickets for my siblings and a couple of other friends attending the wedding, but had forgotten about me. My mother told me not to worry about it, and that they could just find me a cheap airline ticket at the last minute. But I merely responded by asking her, "So, do I even have a dress for the ceremony?" She went with my sister to buy hers and all of the other female guests months ago, but I was not included. That's when my father stepped in and encouraged me to suck it up, saying I'd never been a girly girl and could wear whatever I wanted. This irritated me because, while I'm not the most feminine girl on the earth, I would have liked to be a part of my parents' wedding. And it was about how I'd been excluded from virtually everything for months. We all got into an argument, with them calling me entitled and accusing me of making myself little on purpose, so they would forget about me. As if that is a reasonable reason to ignore a child. They ended up warning me that if I kept this attitude, I might as well skip the entire event. I replied with a defiant, "Fine," and went to my room. The next morning they all departed for Hawaii without me. The ceremony was tiny, but they all shared numerous photos on Instagram and Facebook about how amazing and magical the entire week was. People noticed I wasn't in any of the images and questioned my parents why. They responded that, regrettably, I had caught COVID before the trip, and had to stay behind. My blood boiled at this. I'm not sure why this was the final straw for me, but it was. I decided to take a COVID test, and posted a picture of myself holding the negative test with the caption, "Not sick at all, just forgotten." I tagged everyone who had questioned my absence from the trip and the wedding, as well as everyone invited to attend. I also mentioned in the comments that my parents had completely forgotten about anything relating to me until the day before they left, and that they had uninvited me. Most people supported me, but some couldn't believe it, and assumed there was more to the tale than I was telling. One thing is certain. I destroyed my parents' wedding, and my revelation overshadowed their special day. At first, I felt rather proud of myself for standing up on my own. But after a storm of texts from my family calling me every name in the book, and then when they returned, passionately blasting me for my childish behaviors and spoiled conduct, my pride rapidly faded, and I began to feel terrible. I despise my family and loathe being in this house, but I am a minor and cannot leave just yet. I do believe I could have handled the matter better, and I am now so depressed that I am questioning everything I did, from not speaking up earlier to how I exposed them. I also feel bad about the lack of connection between the rest of my family and me, and I wonder if I could have done more. So, am I an a-hole for wrecking my parents' wedding when they forgot about me? Here are some of the OP's comments. Commenter, not the asshole. Can you move in with grandma? Their track record of rejecting you anytime you attempt to cooperate with them suggests that this was not an isolated incident. It's as if they don't consider you family. If you have somewhere to go, no judge will force you to return to their home at the age of 17. Get your stuff, take your documents and leave. OP. Hello and thank you for your comment. I would prefer to live with my grandmother, but I am starting college soon. I was able to arrange for it to begin later in the school year, and my school is in the same city where we live. But my grandmother lives in another state, so I'd have to quit to leave. I have no other relatives here, only friends, and I don't want to be an imposition. Grandmother and other relatives. OP. My grandmother was unable to attend the actual wedding. She lives in another state and travel is tough for her due to mobility challenges, so we only see her when we visit my mother's hometown. I know she read my Facebook post and phoned to inquire how I was doing, but I put on a brave front for her, and haven't contacted her since, though we've texted. I'm not sure if she has a better understanding of what happened, or if my parents have told her a different version of the tale, but she is extremely nice to me, and has always called out my parents for favoritism. I'm really fatigued from everything lately, and the last thing I want to do is burden her, so I haven't called her since shortly after the wedding. To another commenter. No, my extended family wasn't present. My grandmother has trouble traveling, and my uncles live in the same town as her, but they were not invited. When I mentioned they bought tickets for the family, I referred to my siblings, their significant others, and my niece. They also took a handful of pals along with their partners. In total, I believe there were 13 people. Any idea why they ignore you? OP. I have no idea, except that they are incredibly close-knit amongst themselves, and I don't appear to fit in. I've never enjoyed the same hobbies or activities as them. I'm an introvert that enjoys being at home, watching movies, and reading books. Meanwhile, both of my parents enjoy being the life of the party, and frequently arrange gatherings at our home for their friends, which my siblings also enjoy. I was shy as a child and would always hide in my bedroom or basement to avoid people. Although as I grew older, I became more involved in these events, although my parents didn't seem to mind. That is the only explanation I can think of for their actions, but I still don't think it's adequate. Responds. If it's real, could OP be an affair child? She is quite a few years younger than her siblings, and it would explain a lot. OP. I have no idea about that. It's something I've never considered. I believe my parents have always been a close couple who spend a lot of time together and appear to be quite happy, therefore I doubt my mother would cheat. Responds. First-class tickets for the wedding party and other guests but not their youngest child? How is this even possible? Then they don't fix it by getting you a first-class ticket, but an economy ticket because it is cheaper. Did she even have accommodations? No dress either. Just wear whatever? Now it's your fault that they are thoughtless? Hell no. FFS. These parents suck. OP. I believe she meant cheaper airline, because it was more likely that way for me to arrive on time, given that their aircraft was apparently fully booked. Again, I'm not sure about the accommodations. They made no mention of it. I just know that they all stayed at the same hotel where the ceremony took place. Update 1. Hello everyone. I meant to post an update earlier, but I'm still a bit of a mess right now. I decided because my post received such a large response, and so many people commented and messaged me, I should write about the most recent developments. First and foremost, I'd like to thank everyone who left comments on my post and gave their own experiences or perspectives on my issue. Thank you very much. A few days earlier, I couldn't get out of bed, and my family's comments had convinced me that I was to blame for all that had happened. However, after seeing the answers to my article and all of your support, I felt reassured with my acts and thoughts toward my family. I'm still fighting feelings of guilt and melancholy, but anytime I start to spiral, I remember how much this community of strangers has supported me, and I try to calm myself down with your comments. Thanks to your suggestions and guidance, I eventually decided to phone my grandmother and tell her the whole thing. Just to clarify one point before continuing on, I noted it in the comments, but I think I should post it here as well. My grandmother, 77 female, did not attend the wedding. She lives a few states away and has mobility concerns, so she no longer travels. We went to see her around Easter and she mentioned that I might read a poem at the wedding, but it was the last time I saw her in person before everything happened. She has always been very affectionate to me, and has previously chastised my parents for their favoritism, but she is unable to play a more active role in my upbringing because she lives so far away. I'm constantly concerned about troubling her because of her age and health. She had a mild stroke a few years ago and is now back to normal, but I'm still worried. Anyway, I contacted her and told her everything that had transpired during the wedding, including how my parents didn't even purchase me a ticket to accompany them. When I told her, she came to the same conclusion as the majority of the commenters. It was simply impossible that they had forgotten, and they did so on purpose. I cried on the phone with her, explaining how I was feeling, how this has been going on forever, how I feel in the aftermath, and, most importantly, my need to go. She was really lovely and soothing to me, telling me that I didn't have anything else to worry about because she had my back completely. She encouraged me to take it easy, but to make preparations for the future, and that she would assist me. After that 2-hour chat, I felt better, and I decided to listen to her and get started on planning for the upcoming school year. I have a friend who is going to rent a studio near our future campus. She has a wonderful relationship with her parents, but she has 5 younger siblings and wishes to be more independent, which is why she opted to move out. I asked if I might move in with her temporarily, and promised to pay her rent as soon as I obtained a job. She immediately agreed and advised me not to worry about rent or anything else until I was in a better situation. We had a good cry together when I told her about my parents' wedding incident. So, this happened a few days ago. I had planned to do the update then, but my grandmother called my dad and siblings to scold them on how they were treating me. My brother just texted me a half-hearted apology, stating he didn't realize I wasn't included. He just assumed I wouldn't enjoy the vacation, and tweeted the picture to cause drama. My sister, on the other hand, berated me, and told me that I continued making public my own problems, and blaming them on my family, despite the fact that they were all innocent. My folks have been acting strangely since returning from their trip. At first, they berated and chastised me. Since then, we've been ignoring each other. After my grandmother summoned them, they entered my room and told me that if I wanted to put this whole thing to rest, I needed to stop talking about it, and that it could have already been resolved if I had kept my mouth shut. I just requested them to leave my room and contacted my grandmother again to inform her what had happened. She then informed me that she and my uncle had purchased plane tickets to come down and see me. This was something I was concerned about because my grandmother's health isn't great, and this level of work is too much for her. I understand how difficult it is for her to get on a plane, so I attempted to discourage her from coming and assured her that everything would be fine. But she refused to listen, telling me that she was long overdue for a chat with my parents and that she wanted to meet me. I'm worried about her, and I feel like I forced her to take a lengthy, difficult trip because of me, and that maybe I should have handled this myself. I really want to see her and embrace her right now, but I'm afraid of her. At the very least, my uncle, Mom's older brother, will accompany her, but I hope she does not exhaust herself or that nothing bad happens to her, because that would shatter me. They arrive tomorrow and haven't notified my parents about their vacation. My grandmother begged me to keep it a secret until she arrived. I'm hoping she can persuade my parents to see the error in their ways, or at the very least help me break the news to them that I'll be moving out shortly, and will have no contact with them. I do not know. I'm concerned about her having to do so much for me and troubling her. But I also appreciate and love her for doing everything for me. Update 2. Hello. I apologize for not updating or commenting sooner. As you can tell from my previous posts, it's been a really hectic week. There have been a lot of messages and comments on the post, and I haven't had time to respond to anyone until now. I apologize for it. You've all been so supportive and compassionate about me and my story, and it's been both eye-opening and horrifying to realize how many other people have had similar stories of neglect and abuse. I just wanted to thank everyone for taking the time out of their day to send some kind thoughts to this online stranger. We apologize for the lengthy nature of this update. I'll just resume where I left off. So my grandmother called to say she was going to see me and help me out. I was quite concerned since my grandmother has a difficult time traveling, so taking this trip would put her under a lot of stress, and I felt responsible for her, because I was the one who contacted her. She came early Monday morning with my uncle, and I went to pick her up at the airport. And that was a very powerful and emotional experience. As soon as I saw her, I went to her arms and burst into tears. I'm not sure if I was able to tell her anything at the time because I was crying so hard, and I had so many things to say. Thank you for coming, for being so good to me, for having my back. I'm sorry for forcing you to take this trip. I feel terrible at home. I'm not sure if my parents love me, but I know you do. Am I an affair child? When I saw her, I was overwhelmed with all of this, plus shame and anxiety, at once. But she grabbed me tightly in her arms and assured me that everything would be fine. My uncle hugged us as well. I'm not sure how long we stayed like this, but it must have been a while before my uncle informed me we needed to start going. We got a taxi and proceeded to their hotel. My grandmother had watery eyes, and I could feel her heavy breathing, which terrified me, yet she hugged me and smiled the entire time. She had rented a double room for me to stay with her for these few days, and once they were settled in and I was calmer, we sat down and I told them everything. Years of neglect and emotional abuse. How I felt awful after the trip, but also for years. How my parents tried to make me feel guilty for all that had happened. And how I was concerned about my future. But, at the time, my first objective was to get out of that place, even if it meant sacrificing my academics. How I made plans to move in with a friend while also hunting for work. I told them about this post, and how some people assumed I was an affair child, and how I was beginning to doubt that as well. It was a lot, and I could tell they were both deeply moved by what I was saying. But they kept soothing me and making me feel safe enough to open up to them. After I shared all of my fears with them, my grandmother assured me that I had nothing to worry about, and that she would always be there for me. First and foremost, she informed me that I was not an affair child, and that both my parents were overjoyed when my mother became pregnant with me. She knew that adultery was the ultimate deal breaker for my mother, and she assumed the same was true for my father. Apparently, favoritism began when I was about 3 or 4 years old. My parents were often moaning about having a young child in the house. They were worried that they could accompany my older siblings to their activities, but not me. I was also quite shy, and a bit of a crybaby, which they could not tolerate, setting me apart from my siblings. She informed me that she knew my parents had saved more than enough for my education. They're quite wealthy, so it had never occurred to me until now, that they may take the money I needed for my schooling. However, if they tried not to pay for my education, Mom would take care of it, and would not allow me to drop out due to financial constraints. She also promised to help me with rent, and an allowance to move out. She was incredibly generous, and I thanked her for everything. However, I also said that this experience had been eye-opening in the sense that I had never recognized how financially fortunate I had been my entire life. Despite their flaws, my parents have always treated me well financially. I went to private school, have a significant monthly stipend, and have had a card for years. They have never complained about any of my purchases. Seeing the stories here made me realize how fortunate I've been, and how being reliant on them my entire life had left me vulnerable to losing everything. I want to be independent, not just from my parents, but from everyone. I feel as if I need to learn to stand on my own. To be honest, writing this, and reading all of the stories of individuals in truly bad situations makes me feel like a spoiled brat my entire life. She demanded that I accept her assistance until I no longer required it, and I consented. But I would continue to hunt for work and try to manage on my own. We rested for a bit at the motel because we were all fatigued from the morning. In the afternoon, we took a cab to my home. When I walked in, my parents were surprised to see my grandmother and uncle with me. But before they could say anything, my grandmother instructed me to go pack all of my essentials while they talked. I rushed upstairs where I could hear my grandmother and uncle berating my parents for everything they had put me through. At first, I could hear my parents defending themselves, but they finally quieted down. When I arrived downstairs with 2 suitcases and a backpack packed with everything vital from my room, they were all in the living room. My father turned crimson red, and my mother sobbed like a kid. When she saw me, she extended her arms in my way, apologizing. But I simply responded, "Save it," in the coldest tone I could conjure. My father said I didn't have to be a jerk, but my uncle and grandmother told him to stop up. I exited the premises at that point, and waited for the cab outside. At the motel, my grandmother told me that I would not have to return to them. They informed her that my college tuition was never in dispute. They had planned to throw me an elaborate birthday party to compensate for the wedding disaster, and to give me a car as an apology for everything. But my grandmother was having none of it, because it was evident to her that they were just attempting to save face. They were making these decisions on the fly, and a party and a car would not compensate for what they had put me through. My mother apparently broke down when she discovered I had questioned my paternity. She began crying. But my grandmother told her that given that they had consistently excluded me from all family functions since I was a youngster, what more could they expect? She assured me she'd make sure they paid my school, unless I wanted to cut relations with them and have her pay until I could pay myself. I asked her to do that. I felt awful because I felt it wasn't her job, but I really don't want anything else from my parents anymore. My grandmother is fairly well off, although not as wealthy as my parents. However, she told me that everything was okay, and that everything going to me would be deducted from my mother's inheritance. The next day, my buddy, her parents and grandmother accompanied us to the studio where we planned to relocate. My grandmother immediately said no when I arrived. I knew from the photographs that the studio was very small and dusty, but we discovered water damage and mildew in the bathroom and kitchenette. There was also corrosion on the ancient appliances. I was aware of all of this beforehand, but I believed I could deal with it, at least for a while. However, the fact that this studio was at street level in a bad neighborhood, in a building that didn't seem particularly safe, and had bullet holes on the walls, which I didn't even notice until my friend's father pointed them out, was what made me and my friend change our minds. So Granny and my friend's parents agreed to hunt for an apartment for us in a better area and help cover the bills. Both my friend and I want to be independent, but we know that with our anticipated minimum wage employment, in such a high-demand region, we won't be able to get anything better on our own. As a result, the plan is to look for a 2-bedroom apartment, and my buddy and I will pay what we originally anticipated for the studio, with her parents and my grandmother covering the difference. I know I'm still spoiled to anticipate aid from my grandmother, but after seeing the studio in person, I honestly wouldn't have felt secure there. My friend's parents, who were aware of my situation, offered to let me live with them until we found a suitable apartment, for which I am really thankful. I've been staying in the motel with Granny since she leaves in a few days. Apparently, my friend, her parents, and my grandmother discussed this before approaching me to ensure I had a safe place to stay until we moved into the apartment, which is yet to be discovered. I teared up as I thanked them, seeing how many people had rallied around me to give assistance. Since then, I've been transferring some of the belongings I left at my parents' house and setting up my space at a friend's. Every time I return, my mother cries and apologizes, and my father has also expressed regret. But I remain distant and frigid towards them. My sister called and told me that our mother was a mess and that I was a dick for what I had done, but before she could finish, I hung up and blocked her. I was about to block my brother as well, but then I noticed he had sent me a very long message apologizing repeatedly for all he had done to me, and for not recognizing our parents were treating me so badly. He says he's been doing a lot of self-reflection in the days after Grandma called, and he realizes he was wrong for presuming I wasn't on the trip because I didn't want to attend, and for simply allowing our parents to exclude me for years. I replied briefly, thanking him for his remarks but stating that I needed space and was not ready to accept his apology. I believe he is sincere because he has never been mean to me in the same way that my sister has. He has simply been distant. But I also feel like I need to keep him away for the time being. Also, since everything is so new, it feels proper to maintain contact with my family. Maybe in the future he will show me that he is just as vicious as everyone else, and I will block him. However, as long as he respects my boundaries, I feel better not cutting him off totally. I've also scheduled an appointment with a therapist who specializes in neglected teens, and my first preliminary visit is next week, funded by my grandmother, which makes me even more eager to find a job as soon as possible to relieve her of the burden, even though she has repeatedly told me that she is willing to do everything for me. That's where things are right now. I'm not sure whether I'll blog again, maybe when I start school or move into my new apartment, but for the time being, I'm simply trying to spend time with my grandmother and uncle, learn to grow, and overcome the emotions of shame and melancholy that have plagued me for so long. I'd like to thank everyone in this community again for being so lovely and helpful to me, as well as those of you who have messaged me with your personal tales of being kicked out, or having to learn how to make it on your own at a young age. You've made me feel a lot less alone and shown me that things can improve if I work hard for them. I feel lucky to have such a wonderful support system in my grandmother, uncle, and buddy. But you're all right. Reaching out has been the finest move I could have made. Opening out about my sentiments to those that love me, as well as all of my internet pals, has truly saved my life. So thank you. I am more grateful than words can express. OP's comments. Commenter. I'm curious. What did your folks say when you returned to recover your belongings? OP. Every time I've gone there, my mother has cried and said, "I'm sorry again." I haven't spoken with her, so she hasn't brought up specifics. I also have not given her a chance. My father has largely remained silent, staring at me whenever I enter and depart. However, when he apologized, he used the phrase "I'm sorry for everything," rather than mentioning any wrongdoing on his part. I'm not sure if they're startled by what's happening right now. I am overwhelmed and haven't had time to comprehend it, or if they don't believe they have done anything wrong and are simply acting for grandma. I don't know myself, so I can't really respond. Commenter. Don't take off your nose to spite your face in terms of college funds. Your parents are responsible for paying the entire bill. Don't burden yourself with that expense when they can cover it. This is the least they can do. OP. My grandmother has previously told me that it is unacceptable for me not to attend college because my parents would not pay, and she will not allow me to acquire a student loan. I asked if she would co-sign, and she flatly refused, saying she would rather pay herself than see me upset about the money. I will not endanger my education for my parents, but since I have the choice of having my grandmother pay, that is what I will do. Because I would rather not get this money from my folks. Knowing them, they would hang on to this truth for the rest of my life as if I owed them. I'm incredibly fortunate that my grandmother will take care of things. I feel as if I don't deserve her. Commenter. I hope you're not feeling guilty about coming from a wealthy family. OP. You aren't pampered. You appear to be more self-aware than many other people from your background. Working and living independently from your family will allow you to explore the world. I honestly don't believe you're a pampered, affluent child. Working for what we need and want can help us build our character and teach us a variety of skills, including how to deal with tough people and situations professionally, the value of each hour and money earned, teamwork, societal institutions, and more. I'm glad you have a safety net with your grandmother. Don't listen to anyone who would judge you for it. Many of us are living hand to mouth and paycheck to paycheck, and I would not wish that on someone starting out in life. If you ever want to provide an update on how things are doing, I will surely read it. Thank you for sharing such a terrible time in your life. OP. I feel more sorry than angry about my background and how naive I've been my entire life to all of my advantages. This self-awareness that you mention is something I've learned in the previous few weeks. Because when I first battled with my parents, I didn't think about money or how I'd support myself. That has always been a given for me, which is good since I am not yet 18. But after posting here and seeing posts from people who have had to deal with the financial consequences of being neglected, cutting off their family, or leaving home at a young age, I realized how out of touch I was. I'm angry for all the other Redditors who haven't had the same opportunities as I did, and I'm angry at myself for being so casual about money and privileges that I believe most people do not have. I want to be self-aware enough to, 1. Thank those who are assisting me and appreciate what they are giving me. And 2. In the future, I want to be independent while also being aware of how difficult it is for other people who did not grow up in a 5-bedroom house in an expensive neighborhood with private school and all of the other benefits I've received. Update 3. Hello everyone. It's been a while, and I apologize for not responding to messages or providing an update sooner. I've been quite busy, and I'm trying to detach myself from everything that has occurred to me. But I'm back with an update on how things are going, in case anyone is interested. To continue where I left off, I relocated to a friend's house when my grandmother visited me, and we were able to stand up to my neglectful parents. My grandmother and uncle left just a few days after I last provided an update, and it was a very sad time for us both. For the first time in my life, I felt safe and loved by someone in my family. I'm sure there have been times in my life when I didn't feel so sad and alone, but that week with my grandmother made me feel as if someone was always in my corner. I will be eternally grateful to her for being there for me. After she returned to her hometown, I moved into my friend's parents' home while we looked for an apartment. She was already working as a private instructor for small children, and helped me secure the same job, so we are now co-workers. The position is fantastic, and the income is reasonable for a first job, so I was overjoyed to be hired. We also located an apartment. It is close to campus and has 2 bedrooms, a large living room, and a kitchen. It's not big, but it's clean, and in a neighborhood primarily populated by college students, so it's fairly lovely, plus there are plenty of great places to hang out and meet new people. We're now in the midst of relocating, and I'm writing this post from my new bedroom. I had my 18th birthday a few weeks ago, and it was fantastic. I went to a restaurant with some pals and had a good time. The only drama I've had with my parents since the disaster is that they came up at my friend's house on my birthday, requesting to see me. I wasn't present at the moment, but my friend's father was, and he informed me that they were both very sorry and begged him to put me in touch with them. They left him a note in which they admitted that they had been terrible parents, but they wanted to make amends and begged me to talk to them. Maybe I'm frigid for what I did next, but I opted not to respond in any way, and asked my friend's father to tell them to leave if they showed up, which he respected. A part of me wanted to approach them and attempt to repair our connection, but I also felt like it had taken all of this effort simply to show them I existed, and how much they had harmed me throughout my life. If I go back now, I'll be betraying myself and all of my efforts to grow and become independent. After my birthday, I had a few weeks until we could begin moving into the new apartment, so I went to see my grandmother at her home. I showed her the many photos I took of the new apartment, informed her about my new work and the classes I'm about to begin after New Year's, and she was overjoyed for me. We also had a family gathering to commemorate my birthday, and my uncles and cousins joined us at Grandma's for a party. My brother also arrived. I've been communicating more and more to my brother. Of all my close family members, he is the only one who has never mistreated me. Although he was inattentive of me, and relished my parents' favoritism, he never mistreated me, and I believe he was also a victim of the toxic environment that was our home. I don't completely trust him, but he has really apologized. And because he lives nearby, he wants me to feel like I can count on him if I ever need anything. I feel safer knowing that I have at least one family member in my city that cares about me and will assist me if necessary. When I asked him how my parents were doing, he said he hasn't had much contact with them since I left. He blames them for the entire predicament, whilst my sister claims that I am being selfish and causing grief to my parents since I am the problem. I'm not sure how that works. Many of my parents' friends appear to have shunned them after learning what had happened to me. According to my brother, they are constantly asking for me, and are now telling anybody who will listen, that they messed up and shouldn't blame me for their behavior. They wish to correct their faults. I'm not sure if I buy this act. I believe they understand that the best thing they can do for their reputation right now is to try to put the ball in my court in terms of reconciliation, so they can appear to have done their part. I'm more focused than ever on my future, and I don't want to think about it. I go to therapy, and I'm trying to grow and accept the love of my newfound support system, which includes my friend, her family, my grandmother, my uncles and cousins, and possibly my brother. I hope this is my final update since I want to conclude this chapter of my life. If I come back here, it will most likely indicate that something has happened. But I wanted to share the good news with everyone, because you genuinely saved my life in a terrible situation. I was so down in the days following the wedding that I wanted to curl up on my bed and disappear. You all helped me get up and face the music, and I'm happier than I ever imagined I'd be. I'm looking forward to all of the good things that will happen in my life. So thanks to everyone.